Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome back to another powerful, provocative, empowering episode of the Modern Masculinity podcast. I'm your co-host, CK, aka Coach Kyle.
What's going on, my people? It's your boy Anwar Ahmed, aka A Squared.
And we were planning for this episode yesterday, and we felt the vibe, we felt the energy, and we weren't even talking to him yet. So now we're able to bring him into the conversation. Today we have a lovely, empowering gentleman named Cyrus Henry. On Instagram, he goes by the Panda Shaman. And we are amped to be here. Cyrus, thank you so much for being here. Before we let you kind of dive in, we are going to do what we always do. You know what time it is, everybody? It's mood check.
Yes.
What is going on, Cyrus? How are you doing today, my man? How are you feeling?
Thank you. That's really interesting you say mood check, because I was thinking about today about doing a vulnerability check and starting a challenge, whether that picks up or not, but I do a vulnerability check on my socials every week just to show up in that vulnerability. So right now, the sensations I feel is I feel super excited, especially what we did just before. I feel so grounded and connected with you gentlemen, with my body and with my voice. And so that's the sensation I'm feeling right now. And underlying with that, I feel a lot of fire in my mission and my vision. And then I'm also working through some challenges with my relationship. So I'm feeling with my intimate relationship. So I have a couple experiences that I am feeling into of this fire with my vision. And then working through my relationship with my partner, and then feeling excited at the same time. So just feeling all these different moods that are existing at the same time.
I love the way that you phrase at the beginning, the sensations that I'm noticing. I feel like that's what I'm going to run with from now on. I'm stealing that for this podcast. The sensations I'm feeling, because really what I heard in that is such a more direct link to what I'm feeling. And I think that the mood check asks, how are you feeling? And I go with these words and these really sometimes the processing of my thoughts, like what's happening with my thoughts more often than my feelings. So the word sensation requires me to sense. It requires me to look or feel into my body, which I love. So thank you for using that word. And one thing that I would like to ask is the sensations that you're feeling with these new relationship challenges. What would be that feeling?
Discomfort. Discomfort, but with layered with love, hope, and a desire to do the work and work through it. And so showing up for that discomfort is because that's where the growth is. And the motivation is love. And so as opposed to what has kind of come in a little bit is the runner program. I'm going to run. This is uncomfortable, but I know that my work now is in relationship and showing up for the discomfort and the growth there. So beautiful. So that's where that is.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you. I want to get that contrast. I think really understood is the fire, the excitement, and then at the same time, the discomfort. You know, all of those coming into one is such a powerful way of just describing the human experience. Is that just sometimes it's not just one, it's many at once, and how we navigate that is beautiful. Anwar, what's your mood, man? How's your mood this morning?
I mean, I got to follow up. This guy seems in tune. This is
that's why I gave it to you next. I didn't want to go next.
well in tune. You know, I'm going to echo off of that. I'm going to feel that energy and try to, get deeper into my mood check today too. I think one of the words you said there, I think Kyle resonated with the sensation. I resonated with the experience. You said the word experience. You know what I'm feeling from this experience is experience of relationships. And I think that, with my experience of me as a person, I'm going through Ramadan right now. So, I'm dealing with a lot of, really understanding giving up, and giving up things, coffee, giving up, food, you're giving up water, the discipline it takes to just, be with yourself, and really control your mind. I think a lot of people think that, when you're doing fasting or when you're doing Ramadan, all you do is give up water or you give up food, but you give up negative thoughts, you give up, provocative music, you give up. It's a very cleansing experience where, like, even if you're in a room with people who are, talking negatively or gossiping, you're meant to leave the room. You're not supposed to engage in any of that energy. Like, you're supposed to really be conscious of, your commitment to the day, your commitment to the fast. And so I feel very proud of the discipline that I have in that space right now. I feel very, it's grounding me in a lot of ways. It's my whole days, my whole routines are off. I'm staying up until 1 a.m. to try to get all the food in and all the water in. And I'm waking up at 8 and, starting work at 9, when usually I wake up at 7 a.m. But being patient with myself and understanding that that's what my body needs me to do right now. And just that process has been very, very, what's the word? What's another word for re-cleansing or rejuvenating? It feels very like a recycle of energy. It feels like I'm recycling my energy right now. So I feel really excited about that. But then, in my work life, in my professional life, I feel very anxious. I feel very I'm really trying to practice putting my left foot in front of the other, but I can't help but keep staring at how big the mountain is. And it's ruining my ability to show up in a day because I'm so worried about, planning 10 years, and so I think that I need more grace for myself in that space, I think. So I'm feeling a lot of discomfort. There's a good word. I'm feeling a lot of discomfort in my, and it's at that point too, where it's like, you're feeling discomfort, but you've been doing it for long enough. So now you're not a new kid anymore. When you're new and the discomfort is okay, because you're like, yeah, I'm new. I should feel like this is struggling or whatever. But when you've been doing something for a while and you're still not over the hump, I feel like that is really where the mental challenge comes in, because you don't have the excuses or the pillars to lean on. I'm new, or I shouldn't know how to do this very well, where now you're dealing with, you just don't do it very well. And that's a harsh reality to lean into, and so, and then, yeah, those are the two biggest moods I'm feeling. Those are the two biggest experiences in my life right now that are encompassing my mood in general. My fasting practices right now are taking up a lot of how I'm feeling, and my work, and the commitment to my job. And it's my birthday on Monday. So I think a little bit of, grateful for going around the sun another year, but I can't help but ignore these negative thoughts of, are we still in the same place? Have we gone around a whole nother year? And I just don't feel like I did what I wanted to do in that year. And it's a negative thought process, because if you actually wrote it down, you probably did do a lot. But it just feels like, oh, I went from 30 to 31 and I don't really feel like my environment's changed that much, so I'm trying to not let that get into my psyche and try to be enjoy the idea that, hey, not everyone makes it to 31, not everyone makes it to 32. And, one of my best friend's father just passed away. And so that perspective lives very close to me right now. And, rest in peace, David Barber. But yeah, those are all the things that I'm feeling in this moment. So.
Thank you for sharing.
Yes. No kidding. Listen, I was just about to, I was obviously kind of navigating his, and I'm like, okay, what is my mood? I was trying to decipher it. And I was thinking about so much of your presence in this call, Cyrus, because one thing that I recognize about even just our first call that we had was that it has already begun to feel like we can't hide from you. And what I mean by that is what you embrace in this space is you invite us to stop hiding from ourselves. And that is, it's felt on an energetic space because I just feel safe. And so huge kudos to you for that presence and for that energy that you've brought into the space, because that was Anwar's best mood check he's ever done in his entire life. So that was incredible. And for me, even too, it was getting into my own mood. And it just felt like it was going to be similar in the sense of this is all of the ways in which I'm feeling about all of the things. It wasn't just I'm feeling, really empowered today and excited. It was, well, here's this part of my life. I feel like this and this and this, and I feel like this. The sensations are this. And it just felt like an unraveling and unveiling of the feelings. So I appreciate that. Thank you for that.
My pleasure.
Without effort, I'm sure it's just you. But to finish up the mood check, similar vibes. I can feel the energy of you. So I am feeling called forward, which is beautiful. And at the same time, very excited and I think that word, I wish I had a better word for excited, but I think excited gets to the root of the human experience feeling, because I really want to discuss the things we're going to have in this conversation. And I really, really have, I try my best to stay connected equally between the way I phrase it, the 3D and the 5D. And so just having that balance, and I do feel like I have had a bit of a disconnect with something greater than me, the 5D, the spirituality side of me that I love so much. And so for me, that's the excitement in this conversation, is being able to get into that again and just be in a safe space with it all and just flow with it. So I could share a lot more, but that's really the dominating feelings and sensations that I'm going through right now. So. Great mood check, guys. Wow. Great mood check. Oh, that's a start. That's
fantastic.
Yes.
So just to kind of, echo off of the mood check, and, we kind of know how you feel today, but we don't really know who you are, and the audience doesn't really know who you are. So we wanted to kind of start there. We want to take you to a little bit more of this. We're obsessing here at Modern Masculinity about this inner child. Where so much of the guy's work is to skip a bunch of chapters to become this thing, and then now you're the thing. And that's what you go by. We don't ever talk about what made you that, or we don't ever discuss your childhood, which those are a lot of the reasons why we are who we are, is the stories that we carry for years, those stories that we're either trying to overcome, or the adversity, or all of those things. So I want you to take your mind back to a younger version of yourself, before you were the panda shaman, I should say. You were Cyrus. What was Cyrus like as a kid? Like, what was your upbringing like, and who are you? Give us a little bit of insight on who Cyrus Henry is.
Thank you for that invitation. I want to section it off. There's a couple of sections in my childhood which created the foundation of who I am. So I'm a sibling of 7. I have 4 brothers and 2 younger sisters. No, there's 4 boys and 2 girls. So I'm one of 8, I think. Something like that. I have 2 older brothers, 2 younger brothers, 2 younger sisters. That's it. Us 4 older ones have different fathers, and we don't know our fathers. And so us 4 older ones who never met our fathers throughout our life were in between family members. The first oldest was adopted out to a family friend. Second oldest was taken by my grandmother, and me and my younger brother were between aunties and uncles, and then with my grandmother. Why I share that is that kind of gives you an idea of where I was coming into this world. I was with an auntie. Then I went to another auntie and uncle, which was a very family environment. And then my mother wanted me to come back. And then I ended up going to my grandmother from the ages of 3 to 6. And then I was with my mother and my stepfather between the ages of 6 to 14. Then I moved away back to my grandmother from the ages of 14 to 17. So that's kind of like a time period of what happened. A couple of things that from my awareness as an adult, that I look back on, I was like, oh, wow, this is where this comes from. And one of the things that what I find offers me a lot of humility and humbleness in this very moment is from the ages of 3 to 6, I was living with my grandmother, and we had our own land, and we had our own beach, and we had no power, and we grew our own food. And it was quite a strict environment. It was like, you eat breakfast, you go outside and play, don't come back to lunch. And because we had this whole playground of nature, and the house had a fence lining. I was like, don't come inside the fence, just go out. Don't go past that tree in the horizon. That's the only boundary. And so here I am in this place of, as I reflect, of complete play and curiosity of how do I have fun. And I had nature to do that, and I had a brother to share it with. And at the same time, like if there was gardening to do, we'd have to do gardening all day. So like this little period of like no power, gathering, making your own food, like really quite strict rules, I felt gave me this humbleness, this humility, and this respect that I have for life and my present moment. Then my mother wanted me back into the family, and I go back to my mother between the ages of 6 to 14. And then my stepfather's a Malaysian Chinese, so I grew up in a bit of a Chinese background from his influence. And then from there, this is where, as I look back, it's like, oh, this is why I'm passionate about men's work, because halfway through that time period is when my stepfather started to become physically abusive to me and my brother, for reasons unknown. Could be a couple of things, could be medical things, could be his own children came into our world, but all of his anger was taken out on me and my brother. The one thing I'm thinking and feeling into right now is, as I've done this work of reflecting back on this experience and the awareness that I have, and starting to communicate with my siblings and my family in this moment, like in real time, it's like often reflected as, you guys had it really hard, me and my brother. Like what you guys went through, shouldn't have gone through. And I'm getting a little bit emotional because I recently spoke to my sister over the last 3 months, and like I'm actively working through this, and I can't say that my siblings are, especially my brother. And I know there's a hard conversation that I have to have with my brother. And how are you feeling? How has this impacted your life? And he doesn't open up. And my objection is, or my perspective is quite often for men not opening up. And he opened up once to my sister, and he said, I could have died. And I really heard that, and I was like, wow. I was like, wow. So yeah, so that was that period of halfway between 6 to 14. And basically it got to a point where we were getting older, and my mother was like, do you guys want to leave? And we're like, yep. And it was my stepfather was the breadwinner, not just for our family, but all of our, all the other families, our cousins and our aunties and our uncles. So I also have been working through money trauma, because of linking luxury and money to him is not safe. And so I've had to work through a lot of money trauma throughout my time of bringing that in. So yeah, my mom gave us the opportunity. We took it. We're like, yeah, we're going. We went to our grandmother's. She didn't tell him for like 3 months, because in that period of like that year of leading up to that, it was getting really bad. And me and my brother like started, we're like, can we stay at our cousin's place? Can we stay at our cousin's place? And it was quite often. And so like us leaving, he didn't quite notice it because we weren't there. And then what's interesting is when he asked, where's the boys? She was like, they're gone. Because if you're aware of New Zealand, there's a North Island and the South Island. We were living in the North Island. We left to the South Island. That's where my grandmother was. And he asked my mom, where's the boys? And she said, they're gone. And he's like, what do you mean? Like, they're gone. They're gone. They're with their nan. And he basically broke down and said, you took my boys away. And so that's an interesting, as I reflect as an adult, even then receiving that, when my mom shared that with us like a year later after we moved away, I was like, well, that's interesting. And then it brings me to this concept of like, was he so safe and comfortable with us that he shared his pain with us and projected his pain onto us? That we were just those people that, whether he thought we could handle it, or just felt so much safety that I want to feel safe to be vulnerable and project all my anger and pain onto you boys. and then my brother and I experienced this freedom of not worrying, of not being in fear. And then we moved with my grandmother and my two older brothers, and started to really, what felt like, in my observation of my brother and myself, really started to blossom and started to find ourselves. And so when I say where I'm from, I say I'm from the South Island because that's where I started to find who I was. And my brother and I grew close to my big brother's girlfriend's parents, and they became that mother and father nurturing role for us. Because how I like to express is like my mother, like that brought me into this life, has her own, I guess, in my projections, her own trauma that she's working with, which therefore felt like there was an emotional block of relationship in terms of like mother-child nurturing, where I felt like my mother was a mother provider, and like, what are all your needs that need to be met, which is great. I'm so grateful. But then a step further than that for me was the desiring of the affection, the nurturing affection, the curiosity into my world, my universe. And so my big brother's girlfriend's parents provided that for me and my brother. Are you guys doing your homework? How's your love life going? Maybe you guys should get a part-time job. And just really nurturing our foundations for our future. And yeah, then after that, like, there's a much other details to that, but that kind of gave me that. One of the examples I can set for that is like, I learned how to hug because of her. I learned that physical somatic affection, which is beautiful. Now I'm such a good hugger even after that. Like, after experiencing that at the age of 15 of like how I would hug to like an embrace. And now I embraced all my friends, everybody I meet with just that nurture that I was taught. So yeah, fast forward, like I went to university for performing arts, dancing. And my big brother's girlfriend's mother was the one who guided me that way, was my nurturer. I was going to go to the army. She was like, nope, you're going to dance school. Like, okay, great. I'm going that way then.
That's a contrast. Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, I went to performing arts school, and she was also what I identify as my first spiritual teacher. Because she did the yoga thing, she played with the crystal, she did the meditation thing. And I was like, okay. And would always give us crystals. So that was my introduction to that world. So I identify her as my first spiritual teacher, at least conscious. And then I went to performing arts, and I was in New Zealand, and I was in Australia for studying performing arts. And I thought to myself, there's this discussion and this concept of the poor artist. Artists don't make money. And I was like, no, I'm not gonna follow that. And what I noticed in my seasoned friends that were seasoned performers were quite often reflecting on their glory days. I was like, I don't want that. So it invited me to feel into, how else do I want to walk this world, knowing that my performing arts career will have a shelf life, has a shelf life. And I was already quite deep into self-development and the spiritual world and meditation. And like I magically came across a spiritual mentor who was a healer and a clairvoyant. And then she offered this like really fantastic donation exchange, because like, you can do everything I can do. And I was like, oh, okay. Still like discovering this. And then that led me to studying a 2-year diploma of energy healing, which then initiated this path of men's work. Because as I was studying, I asked myself, how do I want to offer this to the world? And it said, with men, and also integrating your culture. In that moment, I had no idea why, because my story of like why I was going to do men's work, it wasn't quite there yet. And I was like, oh, but I haven't really experienced depression. I haven't really experienced any suicidal depression. But that's where I wanted to go, was work with men on that level. But I was like, how do I connect with them? What is my story? And so as I started creating my practice of coaching and healing, I started to understand and unravel, oh, this is why I'm doing this. Oh, this is why I'm doing this. And so, yeah, fast forward to now, the last 2 years, because of the pandemic, has guided me to retire from the world of performing arts and therefore step into this role and work that I had been creating. And like basically all this work for like the last 5-6 years that I'm like, oh, I like that idea. Oh, this is going to be good. Oh, how am I going to serve men? Working with men. And so it's just been like, I started and I just went like boosted super fast into where it is now. So I'm really proud as to where it is now. And I feel like I've skipped like 3 years of the starting of a business, or at least the mission. But then again, I had the foundation that I was actively working. Like my side hustle was like my side vision. I'm like, okay, cool. Just like putting seeds in the pot. Okay, cool, this is good. And like they've all been like, in the last 2 years, they like started to sprout, and then I've just been watered them with like magic water that's like allowed them to like really sprout. Yeah, so that's a little bit about my journey. Yeah, it feels. Yeah, that's a little bit about my journey.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like watching a movie.
I could see it on the screen, just strolling by. Yeah,
I think that I'll turn it back to Kyle if you have any follow-up questions. But I did want to touch on just like this. When you were reflecting on kind of your stepdad and your personal experience, it was interesting because I could just see the problems that we face as men just in that exchange, right? It's you were saying how you didn't understand if he was projecting his pain or trying to get out or working through his own trauma by expressing it out in a way that isn't what we would consider a healthy way, right? Which is part of the pain, right? And then you're passing on the baton of the trauma, right? So you're sending the trauma into somebody else, and then now their trauma is they can't speak on the experience that they're experiencing. So it's this two-headed monster of when we do express, it comes out in a way that it isn't a healthy way. And then when we're the ones that have been expressed on, or life is coming at us too quick, or we're feeling the pressures of society or whatever the case may be, we're not willing to talk about it. We're not willing to share. We're not willing to open up about it. And so I just thought, just in that story, you could just see the problems. You could see some of the men stuff that we deal with, and we internalize or we don't speak on, or when we do speak on, we do it in a fashion that's not well received. But yeah, I don't know if Kyle, you have any follow-ups to that story, but that's definitely something that stuck out to me.
No, I appreciate it. I think the willingness to go through that process again, like you said, just is something you're actively processing, and I mirror that. I feel that, and I'm doing the same in many different capacities in my own life, and I know in my own context, so I can imagine it's similar in yours, in the difficulty in embracing those experiences and embracing the possibility of what the past had held, and just kind of finding out, I guess, what feels like the truth of those experiences. Even if you can't really get to the full truth, I've noticed for me, there's a lot of healing, but through the healing, there comes, some pain that I don't think I realized I was navigating, or you never even really gave myself the grace to feel and the right to feel as a younger version of me. So I honor you for that journey, and I am grateful that you are navigating that for yourself, because it's beautiful work.
Yeah, I unravel more and more as I share this work more and more. I'm like, oh, this is why this is happening. Oh, okay, great. Yeah, so it's a constant learning process for myself, and a deeper layer of healing all the time.
Definitely, that kind of leads us right into our next conversation. Let's go back to that magic water you're talking about. I think from that magic water and that seed, you birthed the Panda Shaman. Sounds like that's your Instagram name. That's I'm a big Kobe Bryant fan, so I know he goes by the Black Mamba when he's in his his different state, his alter ego, and I feel like this could be your alter ego. This is separate from Cyrus. This is the person who does the work for others. Talk to us a little bit about the birth of the Panda Shaman, what he does, what his work is all about, and how you've kind of taken those seeds that you've been watering and actually packaged it in a way that serves the world. Talk to us a little bit about that.
I don't even know what that means. I'm sure you'll get into that, but I really don't. I think that'll be good context too.
Yeah, thank you for that question and the way you phrased that with the Black Mamba. I've never thought of it as this alter ego. Now I'm like, yes. So yeah, thank you for that. For me, it's like my social media, my identity has been wrapped around my performing arts. But I've always showed up in, like, especially with all my male friends and everyone, like, oh yeah, I'm doing like the spiritual study, like I'm studying energy healing, and because I give no space of doubt, they're like, okay, that's cool, man. So in this, I guess, rebirthing of my social media and my identity shifting to what may be more of service, and like, oh, this is who he is. Okay, cool. I want to inquire more. Okay, great. And so I was looking for a feeling into welcoming, like, how can I shift my whole identity that will give a clearer understanding of what people may desire from me, and how I can be of service. And I was working, guest facilitating in a 3-month residency, which is a consciousness and circus arts. I was there as a guest teacher for dancing, but also working as the resident energy worker and coach. I was gifted this panda onesie, and like I don't wear onesies because I run really hot, so like I just don't wear much clothes. And we facilitate some ceremonies within the residency as well, cacao ceremony, and other plant medicine ceremonies, and these would be like all night experiences. And I would wear the onesie at like halfway or like throughout the end. And then one of my friends just started to call me, oh yeah, you're the panda shaman. I was like, oh. And then everyone started calling me the panda shaman. And I kind of like really looked at it, but like I'm never connected with the animal, the spirit of the animal. So I really like felt into it. I was like, cool, what does the panda mean? And like for me, it's this representation of the yin and yang, the dark and the light, the masculine and the feminine, these two opposing forces. And like I really resonated with that because I love to go deep into the underworld and do some shadow work. But I also love all the light, fairy, cosmic work as well, because I see both of value, and really see the value in how much light can I bring into the shadow, how much shadow can I bring into the light. So quite often when I'm working through deeper layers of trauma, the underlying energy and frequency is, man, I'm so grateful for this. This is hard, but I'm really grateful for this. And that could be like me wailing, screaming, yelling, and the little child in me is like, good job. Yeah. Just like really feeling. So that's how the name came through, which was offered from friends, because I didn't want to create the name for myself. I wanted to be some way offered and gifted. And so I like really felt into that and was sitting for a year before changing my name on Instagram to the Panda Shaman. I was like, and some of those is like what are people going to think? Like the word shaman is quite a big word. And then I was like, I'm just going to surrender and just try it out. See what happens. It's also an invitation to myself, because how I desire to walk out of this world is serving plant medicine, and that's it, just working in ceremony. And so it's an invitation and a promise to myself of like, this is the path that you're on. And this represents a lot of how you want to work within the shadow and the light, with working with the harder parts. and working with the great parts. So yeah, that's kind of the birthing of the panda shaman. So yeah.
Beautiful. I love it. And I love the name. I think it stands out so uniquely, right? It's very, and I think that's what pulled us into your space too, is just that tagline, the panda shaman. It's just very intriguing. People want to know, what do you mean by that? And what does that represent? And how do you align with that? What does that mean about your identity? There's so much curiosity that it piques. So the gift was gifted beautifully, as they always are. And so I'm very grateful for you sharing that story, and I'm proud of you for embracing it. You know, it's wild to go through the Instagram handle world, right? And when you just don't know what it means, and it feels like it's everything sometimes, especially in our current day and age, is if I don't get this right, then people don't know who I am. And so it's such a fascinating concept. But I love it. Yeah. I resonate with the panda shaman deeply. So that's great. But with that process, you talk about being a medicine plant healer and in ceremony. And so I feel like that's a longer journey. If I'm correct. Yes. So it's a longer journey. So it means you're embarking on it. You're still in the process, which you probably always will be, but that means right now you're still kind of embracing the healing aspect of your work. And the way we kind of want to structure this next question is, you describe yourself as a men's healer. And the way that I represented that yesterday when we were planning for this was that even in my own world, men don't want to be healed, right? It's not like this concept. Like, what do you mean I need to heal? What am I healing from? Like, I'm good. I got this. Like, I'm just moving forward. What are you talking about healing? And so there's a break and there's a misconception, I think, as to what this really means. So I'd love if you could kind of dive into what is men's healing and what exactly do you help men move through with your work?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I had, I want to share like a story of a friend that I recently connected with. He was a bit of a role model growing up. And then we parted ways and just in life. And we recently connected like 2-3 months ago. And the question he asked me was like, so like, what do you do? Like, what is this, like, what is the purpose of what you're doing? Like, I don't get it. With the work, doing the work, self-development, growing. Yeah, and I was really curious about that question. I was like, interesting. And because he's an electrician. So I simply explained to him, I was like, so imagine you're an electrician, you're studying, and you kind of know what you're doing. You go into a job and you kind of know how to fix it. And you kind of tinker with a few things. Now imagine you're like a quantum physicist, electrician. You go in, boom, know exactly what to do. And then I asked him, I was like, now refer that to yourself. These are all tools. What I have is tools on how to support yourself and how to be the best version of yourself. And if you go in and you kind of know what you're doing, then imagine the house won't be working properly. The circuit won't be flowing properly. And then if you actually knew what you were doing, you could really work with the inner parts. Like, oh, how do I work with anger? Oh, there's like this really old rusted wire that's like deep inside the house that I need to dive into and replace it or create some flow with it. And it really, really landed from to the point. It was like, I'm going to pause this conversation. One of my friends just arrived home. I'm going to go, basically what you shared with me, I'm going to go share with him. So yeah, to answer the question, it's an essence of the world of healing. We are perfect in every part of who we are in this given moment, in every given moment. But then there's also opportunity for what else do you want to be? How else more do you want to step into who you are? And so there's the concept of allowing all to be and just allowing yourself to be perfect as you are. But then there's also the teaching of expansion and growth. You're born to be more than who you are in this present moment. And so I totally hear you on this, like, oh, I'm good. Like, what do you mean? And simply my invitation that I offer men is you are. but do you feel there's an opportunity for expansion in here? And let's have a look at all these pillars, your relationships, your health, financials. How are they actually looking? I'm like, cool, there's room for space. There's space to grow. And whoever I'm speaking to and whatever profession they're in, I simply just relate it to their profession, like I did with my friend who's an electrician, and it really landed for him. So yeah, how I express it to men is just using the language that they may be comfortable with, and then eventually giving new language that would support them further. Yeah. What I help men with is exactly that, is an opportunity, an invitation of, hey, like, let's have a look. Are you actually feeling life? Are you breathing in life? Are you breathing out life? Do you actually feel your body? Do you feel your relationships? Do you feel your mission and your purpose and your work? And whether that answer was like, yeah. I was like, do you?
That was my counter. I could hear it in my own head. Do you though?
Classic. Yeah. You gotta ask men questions twice. You gotta hit them follow up.
And just offering that guidance of that grace of transformation. But and one thing that just came up for me now was I quite often get women partners. Hey, my partner, like, can you work with my partner? Can you come to your retreat? And I basically say no. I'm like, no, unless he says yes, I am not going to accept him. And I simply shared with her, like, educated her, like, from my perspective, men need to say yes. Otherwise, whatever I'm sharing would not be received. And it'll be a waste of your time, money, and his energy. So until he says, yes, I'm ready to do the work, then that's going to be a waste of time, a waste of energy. And she's like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, it's simply what I offer men as an invitation, whether they accept it or not. And through the embodiment of the work, which I continually invite myself to embody the work, breathe it in, breathe it out, and how I show up, that already creates ripples through the men that I connect with. And that process already starts of, can I be more? Can I feel more? Can I love more? Can I receive more? Can I listen more? Can I be more of a man, of whatever that means to me? Can I protect more? Yeah. So I hope that answers both those questions.
Absolutely. It definitely does. And before Anwar asks the next question, for me, it's just the invitation, right? I think that a lot of this work can come with some pressure and a lot of expectation, and the almost like this relentless, like, you have to do this kind of idea. And I think to some extent, yes, because we are having, a bit of a crisis. We have for a long time in regards to men's mental health and the tools and the practices that we don't really seek out. So yes, I think that applying a little bit of pressure to the understanding, it's even just the second question, right? Of, do you though? That slight pressure of that question then asks of us to see a little bit more into ourselves and to see our own life a little bit more clearly. And that, I think, in itself is huge. Like Anwar said, men need to be asked twice. And there's this documentary by Roman Kemp. It's like, I think he says, Our Silent Emergency. And he said, the thing that I'm going to leave with this documentary is the double ask of, how are you? So how are you is the first question. And then they answer, and then how are you really is the second question, because then all of a sudden the dynamic is completely different. And I think that a lot of times we don't have that curiosity into a man's life. It's just, how are you? I'm fine. How are you? I'm good. And that's where it ends. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I think that lands a lot for me in the sense of what the invitation looks like.
No, and I think that, to kind of echo a little bit of kind of, what Kyle was saying there, and just a little bit about your story there was, I think that example with the electrician is beautiful, because I think that, like, Kyle right now in his house, he's got no cold water or something like that. He's only got hot water, but they're living a life, right? It's not broken. They're still moving through it. That rusty wire you're talking about in the basement, you might not, it's there and the rest of the house works. What we do as human beings is we just avoid the closet that's dirty. We avoid the room that's broken, and we just live in the comfort areas of our homes. We will just not enter that room, we'll just, and it's so easy to be like, how are you doing? And me give you an answer excluding those rooms, right? I'll give you the answer based on the rooms that I play in, and they're all doing good. Like they're all great. But the problem is that, are you optimized, right? You got all this square footage and you're only using three rooms or, 4 rooms. And what I love about that is, it takes the courage to actually go down into the basement, rip that wire out and, find the flow in it or replace it or do whatever it takes. And so that's just a beautiful representation of, I think mentally, I'm a very metaphoric thinker. I'm a very visual thinker. And to me, it's like, that's what we are trying to do is when we say do the work, we're saying on that Saturday, instead of going to the 3 rooms that you always go into, maybe you visit the 4th one for a day, maybe, and you're not going to clean everything in that room in a day, but you could do a dent. You can do a little bit of work in that space, right? That could maybe clear up your perspective of, everything else, you know what I mean? And even your fear of that room in general, right? You might go in there, move one box and go, but the fact that you went in there carries so much weight. It carries that, hey, maybe we can get this room clean at some point, And I think what you help people with too, and correct me if I'm wrong or speaking out of turn, but I think a lot of people will enter those rooms and maybe have the desire to want to do something about it, but not know what to do at all. Like, what box do I pick up? How am I supposed to feel? How long is too long to be in that space? So I think that, what a transformational coach to me or a healing coach does is that not only do they go in the room first, they invite you in the room with them and they go, listen, I'll move this box. This is why I moved this box. You move the next one, and you kind of can coach someone through cleaning that room and getting that room optimized. But then ultimately you'll leave their life. But what you leave with them is the tools that they clean the room with, right? And so when problems arise in other areas of their life, they'll remember the experience of, having that guidance, having that, that mentorship in that space. And I think it's very important because even when we have all the motivation and all the energy in the world to want to solve some of our problems, we don't know how, and that is enough to just never do anything about it,
Totally. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that visual. And I was like, yeah, that's it. I just walked them into the room like, hey, this is what we got. Where do you want to start? Okay, this is how we can do it. And that's exactly it. It's interesting you share this room concept because I shared a visualization meditation about that and that same concept, but the inner child aspect. Like, hey, we're going to go into this house. Imagine your house is all these ages you are. Now let's visit the room of your age 7. Let's have a look at it. And then just kind of giving that visual concept of working through all the ages that were of our childhood. So it's really cool that you brought that up. And that concept. So,
I love that. Powerful. Hopefully that lands for people.
Yeah.
I'm going to move on to the next question, but in a really short summary, in these discovery calls, when you're with, people, and you're with men and can you give us like a couple problems that the repetitive ones, the ones that you see across the board, like this is an everyday problem. I hear this one every day. I hear this one every day, just so that our audience can hear some of the problems you solve so that they can see themselves in the mirror maybe a little bit, Could you share in a really quick summary, like what are some of these things that you're discovering on these discovery calls with your clients?
Thank you. The 3 main ones that people come to me with is big emotion, how to work with big emotion, specifically anger. So that's one of them. A second one is understanding how to feel and receive. And basically I'll identify that as our feminine attributes and our masculine attributes, how to optimize both of them. And one of the third ones goes between like inner child, bit of trauma work, stillness and meditation, and love. So yeah, big one is like big emotion. I'll encompass that as big emotion, anger, love, running, the runner program, and then then the understanding the masculine and feminine qualities and how to optimize those, which ultimately comes down to relationship. For me, everything in perspective is relationship. Your relationship with yourself, therefore your relationship with other, therefore your relationship with your surroundings. So yeah, building a relationship with the emotions, building a relationship with an inner child, and building a relationship with the feeling body are the big ones.
I love that. That's such, for me, it's such a great representation of some of the things that I've been working through on my own journey. So I think that it was just the relatability there was huge. And there's something that allows us to enter into the next space for me, which is the big emotion side of this equation. And I think that you have such a beautiful opportunity that was given to you by your culture to support you in this big emotion type environment and expression. And this is going to be my favorite part of my conversation. And we're talking specifically about the haka. Right. Now, I remember it was probably a few years ago, my friend sent me a video, and it was of a team. I didn't know what the sport was. I had never seen it before. And there was this just whole routine that was presented before the game started. And I watched this video and I remember feeling chills in my body. And I remember feeling like the sensation of like, wow, like that just captivated me. That was incredible. But I had no idea what I was watching. I was just like, this is just very, very radical. It felt like at first. And then I started to understand it. And over time now, after doing some deep personal work, I understand, I feel like so much more of what the haka is representing. But the haka is a huge component of your men's healing work. It's a huge component. And it's, I would say, probably the foundation of it all, because it creates the healing process for the men. I don't want to give away too much of it. So I'm going to let you take the floor. But I think what I want to include in here is just kind of your understanding, how you would express to men and how you do. What is the haka for our audience? What even is it? And how does it help? I'll leave you with those two questions to start.
Yeah, the haka is a big part of my work, and it's quite the thing that makes it unique, which is the invitation, plus let's do all this work. So that's what I'm seeing it as, is this invitation of this really cool warrior expression. And then they come in, I'm like, this is all the work that's involved with it. So the haka translates to war dance or war cry. And it's a war cry or war dance from the indigenous culture of New Zealand, the Māori. And typically in the old days, it would be used as an intimidation technique before battle or war. Nowadays, it's also used for not just battle or challenge. So a lot of our sports teams and schools would do haka before they start a match. It's also used for farewell, either in this world or out of this world. It's also used for celebration and acknowledgement. And I've really just forgotten the fourth one. Like really, I was like, oh, I was gonna find it.
Or even just listening, I was like, there's more? Like this is, you use the haka for everything, it sounds like.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Totally.
It's an expression of energy to honor whatever has happened. So yeah, used for battle and challenge, used for farewell, used for acknowledgement, and used for celebration. I'm pretty sure that's the fourth one. It might be not, but I just can't remember at the moment. And there are many different haka. Many different tribes do different haka. Many different schools do different haka. And the haka can mean different things because it has a translation as well. So how I have incorporated haka into my work. The haka that I, it's hard for me to say that I created because it was created through me. Because as it was created, I still didn't understand it. And as I'm sharing it, I'm starting to understand it more. So it's hard for me to accept that I created it because it came through me. But the haka that I work with is called the war cry of man. Koinei te karanga o te tangata. The war cry of man. And I intentionally wanted to work with firstly, I asked myself, can I use haka? And I asked my family, they said yes. And the hakas that are usually performed, I don't quite resonate with their birthing and their energetic layer. So I was like, can I create my own haka? I asked my family, they said yes. Because I wanted to create a haka that's specific to each man that comes in and allows them to interweave and bring their own story into the translation and the words that are expressed. So it's not just this expression from an indigenous culture, it's their expression. And they get to feel it deeply, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, and mentally, that, this is how it feels and this is what I'm witnessing, because it's quite an emotional experience. Even for myself, as I witness haka, it's very vulnerable. I'm like, I can barely look them in the eyes, and I've experienced haka many times.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to be able to translate that power and that energy to men that are not of the culture, to allow them to feel it themselves, because it's an emotional experience. And how I offer it to the men is because there's some components to the haka. One component is we have a foot stomp, which is the rhythm, which is the heartbeat. And so I share it as, first we have to learn the heartbeat of brotherhood. And it's like, takes me like, I'll sit there do it for as long as I need to until everybody's in sync. And then I express it that if you drop out of the rhythm, trust that your brothers are going to keep rhythm for you, that you can find your way back to the heartbeat, which is this heartbeat of community and brotherhood, but essentially it's the heartbeat of one. And so that's the foot stomp. And then we also have another aspect of it, which is called the witty witty, which is a quiver of the hands. And this is what that is we're inviting and summoning the energy of Mother Earth, so much so that energy quivers through our hands. So therefore we have this integration of the feminine of our mother. And then we also have the expression of the pukana, which is the extension of the tongue and the widen of the eyes, which looks like this. And it's used as in just an expression of whatever emotion wants to come through in that moment. And so I work through the men on the expression of the tongue when we get them to do it at each other, to intimidate parts, but for the purpose of bringing closer relationship to yourself. And so stepping into that power. And then we have the expression of the haka. So these three components set the foundation of community, of being in unity. And then I work through the haka, and we just work through the words. I have an interactive way of teaching because in my perspective of men, I feel like we need to move to learn. And so I create it's not a sit down, look at the whiteboard experience. It's a creative way of how can we learn this with the call and response structure. And then we learn the words, we learn the actions, which are quite intuitive and feel very powerful. There's like, because I recently had my men's retreat, and there was like one action that when I taught to them, and it was an African American man, and we did it, and it was like, that's gangster. That's dope. I was like, yes. And like also being mindful that a lot of the men that are coming in may or may not have movement experience, may or may not have rhythm experience, may or may not have voice experience. And so there's a whole bunch of layers of dropping those masks, leaning into the intention, and trusting that those that may have a bit more experience can also support you. And so it creates this unifying experience. And then when we get to the translation, this is when the juicy parts happen. Because how the haka is structured is we work through themes. The first theme is battle and challenge. The second theme is how do you support yourself and how do you support others? Third theme is what is your relationship with emotion and crying? Fourth theme is how do we come together, move forward together? And so the haka has provided me with this program of working through and tapping in to the warrior, the wild man, to this bringing safety to what may be deemed as violent, oh wow, that's too much. Man, you slapping yourself, beating your chest, screaming, yelling, that's violent. And releasing that program of giving the men safety. Oh yeah, it feels good to beat my chest. Oh, it feels good to yell and scream. And then we drop into the translation. For the first theme is, what is your battle? What is your current battle or challenge that you're still either working through or you want to share? And then we invite the transparency and an opportunity to work through it and invite your own story and energy into this expression of haka, so that when you do it again, like, this is my story that is now intertwined and integrated and synergized with this haka, that I have not just one way of expressing my battle and challenge, I can also just express it through the energy itself, as opposed to naming it and going through the story. Here's another way of me expressing this energy, that I can come back to it with a centered, more empty space. And so this haka over the series of the days keeps us in unity, as what I feel, men having a unified goal. And then all the other exercises are more individual goals, even though we're doing work together. We all know that start of the day, we're doing haka and we're doing it together. And then at the end, we do the final performance, which from my perspective is, and the essence of the masculine is this opportunity to ejaculate, to release the energy. And it's the final haka, the final performance of giving men the completion of, we've done all this work. If there's anything left that you need to express, this is an opportunity. And then basically tell all the men to go all out. And yeah, it gives that completion of like, oh, that was great. Let's do it again. Yeah, so that's kind of the intention of the haka, is a vehicle to experience big emotion. And not just, because there's many ways to approach trauma, to approach emotion. It doesn't just have to be the story. Sometimes for men, it just needs to, I just need to go punch it out, or like exercise the energy out, and then come back to center to approach it. And so that's the opportunity and the invitation of a different way to express big emotion, and also tap into the warrior, which I feel the warrior archetype has been a little lost and a little dormant, which therefore invites courage, invites protection, and invites more of that energy into all facets of their life, whether it's business, personal, intimate, or relationship. Basically to give them an invitation to stand on your four corners of your feet, open your chest, open your heart, drop your shoulders, hold your head up high, and walk forward.
Beautiful. So powerful. And I was captivated by that whole thing, because it's just, I think it's so misunderstood. And I knew I misunderstood it as well at the beginning. I just saw this crazy wild dance, and I figured it was some sort of intimidation tactic at first. But now, giving so much more context, I hear so much more of the intentionality and purpose with it all. And I love at the end of it, you said completion. I mean, I've noticed that men love this idea of completion, right? Just getting something to the end, the finish line. The process is a little less provocative for us, and we just more enjoy just getting right to where we need to get to. So I love that representation. And this is going to be a little unorthodox, so please say no. But I love to push the level a bit. I love to open up full immersive experience. I prefer movies at the theater versus movies at home. Like, I love to just be a part of something. So if you are comfortable, what do you think it would be possible to represent the haka through this platform right now for the audience?
As in, do it right now?
Yes.
Oh. Yes and no. Yes and no. Yes, because yes, I can. No, because it's lonely doing it by yourself. And the whole sense of it is like, man, feeling the brothers beside you, going for it, just encourages that. But I can give a little taste.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know how it's going to sound audio wise though, because because like this is my speaking voice. So imagine that times like maybe 10, maybe 50.
Yeah, fair.
I'll give the starting of it, of this haka. But it may not be the fullest expression of receiving it, but there'll be some receiving happening. You can feel free to keep your eyes open, keep your eyes closed, whatever feels comfortable for you. Tutu Pokemon Taina! Taina! Humie! Huie! Taikie! O koinei te karanga o te tangata te pakanga o rato I te wairua hi ha hi. O e kore te rā kou, e tipu ai, kore no te pono kia kaha, ia ha ha, kia kaha, kia kaha, kia kaha. Kupu o te ngā kau, kupu o te wairua, Māori ngā roi mata o te tangata te katangi, katuku, katipu, hi. Tiro ki tō Māui, hi, tiro ki tō mātou, hi, ko rai ne tātou, e oku teina, Nuku nuku whakamu wa tātou katoa, nuku nuku whakamu wa tātou katoa. He atua, he tangata, pona piri tahi, I te toku kaha, I te toku mauri, I te toku wairua, koinei te karanga o te tangata te pakanga, o rato I te wairua, 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 hi.
Yes, my brother. Thank you. Thank you.
Pleasure. I feel it's also important to share the translation of that, if that's okay.
Without
Absolutely.
a doubt. Are you kidding me? Yes, I want to know what that means.
So at the starting, I say, let's come together. Everybody says together, let's bind together. Let us be united as one. This is the call of man and the battle within his soul. Yes, yes, yes. Without the sun, the tree will not grow. Speak your truth, grow strong. Iyaha, yes. Grow strong, grow strong, grow strong. Words of the heart, yes. Words of the soul, yes. The tears of man will fall. I cry, I release, and therefore I grow. Look to your left, yes. Look to your right, yes. All my brethren, we are all one. We are all one. Move forward, all of us. Move forward, all of us. The divine, the man joined as one. My strength, my spirit, my energy. This is the call of man and the battle within his soul, spirit, energy. Yes.
That is powerful stuff.
Yes.
That is extremely powerful. And I think it takes me back to, when I even first, saw the haka, or there's a level of, I don't know if Kyle can relate to this, but for me, I've always felt like since playing sports, or when I played basketball, it was the only place where I could actually let out the real, like, when the emotion of the game is happening or whatever the emotion was, it never felt like there was a hesitation for me to actually express myself in that moment how I wanted to, like whether it was like a full fist pump or like a screaming, like, yeah, like at a teammate or whatever the case may be. It never felt like that was taken out of context. Like I felt invited to be able to do that. I was allowed to. And then I'd realize years later after not playing sports that I was like, I can't just like, in everyday life, there's no real need for me to be like, if I used to work at a restaurant, I couldn't like put a plate down and be like, here are your fries. Like there was no place in life where I could just let it go. You know what I mean? And in that expression of what you're doing there, I'm realizing how much of that I love and I miss. And like what I love about the sport and what I love about the competitive nature about sports is that freedom to just make a play that matters or make a play for your brother. I play team sports. So like, being able to like, put your team in a favorable position. And like you said, doing the haka alone is one thing, but when, you're in that sporting event and your teammates are yelling in your face too, and you guys are yelling at each other, that feeling is unlike any other feeling. And what I think the haka does is it brings you to that place. Mm-hmm. And now I know that if I had my own haka ritual, it's like, that's a place where I can go and get it out. I don't need the four walls. I don't need the four lines. I don't need the teammates. I can actually get into that person that I like, that expression. Wow. So powerful. Mm-hmm. I know Kyle's probably itching to say something, but I'll get my next question after he kind of gets that in there. But yeah, you could feel that. You could definitely feel that.
Yeah, you could. And I was so intentional. Like I just knew I was only going to be with you in that moment. I was watching you. I was fully invested in you in that moment. And even though we weren't doing it together, it was still powerful in its own right, because it was you. This is what I love about immersive experiences. This is why I love to go and watch, like, this is very unorthodox, but like go watch a symphony or a philharmonic and watch them just do their thing, is because it's just like, it's like the purest form of life. Sometimes it feels like it's just, this is life. This is what living looks like a visual representation of living and thriving. And just, it's so powerful to me. And so watching you do that, it's like, this is your element. This is your, maybe even the language that's coming to me is your direct link to something bigger than you, and your direct link to the source itself. And there's just so much that I see in that. And watching you do this is both beautiful and intimidating, because I don't know if I'm ready to give myself that space yet. And to give myself the permission to be a part of something like that, to take part in that emotional release. And so it's just a beautiful mirror back to the ways in which I could possibly feel myself and my life more. And so, yeah, I could go on an hour rant and just express all of the ways in which I feel about the haka. It's something that deeply resonates with me, but I need to just say thank you first. And thank you for honoring yourself in the best way that you felt was right in that moment for doing the haka. And I think my misunderstanding was that this is such a community relationship, almost building and enhancing and deepening experience. It's not just something that's like, I just go and do it just because I do it. There's so much more to it. And I love that, because we love to do things alone, and we love to do things solo by ourselves. And to know that this is something that is just so much better utilized together really speaks to me. And I really honor that you gave us a little tidbit of it and a little experience. I really do honor it. So thank you.
Thank you for that invitation. My intention was to do a little bit, but I got into it. So I did the whole thing. That was the whole thing. That's the whole thing. Without the actions, but like that was the whole thing. I just got into it. I was like, oh, I guess I'm going that way. Yeah. That's the full haka. That's the full translation of it. I do have a shorter version of that I teach in a weekend container as an intro. But yeah, that's it. Minus the actions, tripled that sound. So yeah. Thank you for inviting that. That felt good. I feel good.
It's beautiful. And Anne was going to ask the question, but all I saw, and I was shook, was that there was this person who came in a little like, peaceful, and calm and at ease and just grounded. And then all of a sudden he's like this roaring warrior, just on the battlefield, ready to go. And I love that contrast. I love that contrast. And Anwar is going to attest to it right now. I love that contrast.
I mean, we on Modern Masculinity, we keep talking about this concept of, being a warrior in the garden versus the gardener in the, in the war. And I think that duality that, you just express physically just with your presence and your energy kind of embodies that a little bit. But I want to go back to, when you originally had said, the idea of a man expressing himself fully is a little bit dormant, a little bit, demonized, the pounding of the chest, the really being able to just be who you are. But, like you said, the haka represents like not only that warrior, but that safety within yourself, it's that intimidation, but that groundedness. Like there's this contrast. And I think that sometimes we fail to see the other side. We just see what we see and then that's it. And one thing that I think we really struggle with, especially in the Western world, is we don't have a concept of warrior at all here, very little, if any. There is no initiation. There is no, acceptance. If anything, we feel the pressure of like trying to dim that light, if anything, in my own experience from what I've often, when I was younger, was called loud, in the way I expressed myself, just using my words. I'm not pounding my chest. I'm just using my vocal box in a way that is like open, expressed, and I would get called loud. I used to say, like, the people that didn't like me would call me loud. The people that liked me called me passionate. And that's just with speaking, like that's not me pounding my chest and actually becoming a warrior. So you can only imagine how, the Western world perceives you finding that inner warrior. What I wanted to kind of touch on is I feel like in, your culture and, in the influences that you've been kind of raised with, there's a bit of like an initiation with like, becoming a warrior, becoming a man at certain ages. There's certain rituals you do. I know that you just went on a massive retreat as well of just like finding yourself. I want you to touch on two things. Give us a little insight on what this initiation is like, this going from a man to a boy and what ages they happen at. And then talk to us a little bit about how do we find that inner warrior, what is the initiation process is the first question. The second one is how do we embrace our inner warrior more often, especially with this dormant society that we live in today.
Thank you for those questions. I was fortunate enough to be in a family that was still quite rich with the culture. And my grandmother was an elder, so there's quite a richness in the culture. And having two older brothers, my oldest brother speaks the language, and also was quite often was invited as a speaker in formal settings, traditional settings. And so, and also like my uncles, my mother's brothers were quite, there's a strong line of males in my family, in my lineage. So yeah, the initiation was as I reflect, it was, I guess, in the essence of the initiation that may be in like quite prominent in other indigenous cultures, which is like really quite bigger rites of passages. I feel as I reflect, mine were natural and organic rites of passages. It wasn't like at this age, Cyrus, you're going to learn this. It was an invitation given to me, modeled by my older brother. My oldest brother was a speaker and was I guess like head of like student body for that department of Māori, and therefore he also led haka both for the school and for the teams. Naturally, organically, I progressed into that role, and I had to kind of either like shut it down, but like it just where the invitation was offered, and I was like, okay, I'm going that way. And as I reflect, it wasn't a conscious rite of passage. It was an organic rite of passage that happened of me stepping into the role of leadership, of leading haka. That's what I feel is a big rite of passage into what we would call Māori panga, the world of Māori. is stepping into the caller, the leader of haka. And so I stepped into that role for my sports teams and for the school, and was almost what we would call Maori head boy. I was one vote off, literally one vote off, but I still led like all the haka parts, all the leader parts, and the other gentleman led all the formal speaking parts, which I feel like I didn't want to do anyway. I just want to do the haka. And so part of that also rite of passage was understanding how our traditional grounds work, which is we call a marae, which you can imagine is we have like a meeting house, we have a sleeping house, we have all the elders' little cabanas or little houses, and it's just sacred grounds where like meetings happen, funerals happen, big events, or not big events, but formal events will happen there, and there's a bit of a structure of how it works. And so being accustomed to that and learning that was a rite of passage, and also learning how to cook our traditional food, which is called a hangi, which you can imagine as we prepare all this food in a metal basket, in a steel basket, and we put it in the earth and we create like an earth steamed oven. And that's like a whole like day and a half process. That's kind of like a cool like rite of passage of like, make sure the hangi's cooked, because like there's no way to tell. Like it's set up for a time, and hopefully like there's enough space within the food, and it's in the ground long enough, the irons and the rocks are cooked long enough that it comes out cooked. So that was a bit of a rite of passage. So those are like, yeah, my biggest rite of passage for me that I feel has really supported me in my adult life is I'm stepping into the leadership role of haka. Like if I had this work and like was like guided to do haka, but I hadn't experienced how to lead a haka, I don't know how authentic or how powerful this work would be if I hadn't had that rite of passage of stepping into the leader role of haka. So I'm really grateful that that was modeled by my older brothers. It wasn't like a, you're gonna do this. It was a, naturally you should do this. I'm like, okay. So it was a very soft imitation of that rite of passage. The second question was big emotion.
No, I do wanted to kind of highlight a little bit more of just, you know, the Western world versus, you know, the world that you come from, and just the natural, like, you know, do you feel like do people want to embrace a warrior DNA in your world, you know, versus here, you know, especially with this digital world, there is really no need to go pick up anything heavy, go do anything labor intensive. You need to go call on yourself to go do those things here. There is no need to have to leave your desk. You know, if you can type and you can speak the language, you can avoid all kinds of things here. You know, there's no, and then it's also slightly demonized to, you know, be pounding your chest and actually be a warrior, where I feel like maybe if I wanted to be a warrior, you know, where you're from, it'd be embraced. It'd be, look at this man, you know, he wants it. So talk to us a little bit about, you know, I don't know how much you know about the Western world, but what is a warrior? How do you embrace that inner warrior? How do you have the desire to want to do something about, you know, who you are? If that encourages any listeners to, you know, escape the world that we've created here in North America or the Western world.
And even like, just to extend off it, what would be something we could tangibly like start to do, I guess, if you will, like what would be your suggestions as a men's healer and men coach and men's transformational coach?
Yeah, I guess for me, I feel like it's important to speak to the aspect of why is the warrior archetype important? What does it provide? And I guess for me, from what I've learned, is that there's this saying, right? I'm a lover, not a fighter. And I feel like that has really encompassed the world. I'm a lover, not a fighter. Therefore, like, either not fighting for what you deserve, what you believe in. And I heard someone say, I'm a fighter, but I fight for love. And that really landed for me. And I was like, yes. And so what I feel is this part of that programming of I'm a lover, not a fighter, has softened the modern man. And no, violence is not good. There's violence, and then there's fighting, like fighting for what you believe in. There's physically trying to cause harm, or physically standing up for what you believe in. And it's being okay to open the chest and be like standing on your four corners of your feet. And so, yeah, I feel the warrior, having access to the warrior, building a relationship. So this is the image that's coming in my mind. And all aspects of life, health, finances, relationship, mission, and purpose. The image is, imagine approaching that just naked. Just like, okay, cool, like just the clothes on my back of on my skin. Just that's it. That's just all I have. And then imagine you have your sword, you have your shield, you have your armor, and you feel safe, you feel strong, and then you approach your relationships, approach health, approach finances, approach business. It's, for me, it's like an invitation of building this relationship with the warrior gives you that extra oomph of passion for life, of like, it's not like, I'm gonna do this thing. It's like, I'm gonna do this thing with so much grace, power, and embodiment, which is the warrior's full embodiment of yourself, full embodiment of all parts of your limbs, skin, internal, external, and then gonna do this thing, whatever you're gonna do. So it's the fire. It's the fire is connecting to the warrior. So this is the importance of what I believe is the warrior. How, oh, I got lost in this image of warrior in my head. So yeah, my invitation is firstly building a relationship with the warrior, as creating safety with your physical body, creating safety with the power that the masculine vessel has. Because biologically, the masculine vessel, the male vessel, can naturally do things that the female vessel cannot. That's just how it is. We're a little bit stronger. We can do the stronger things. And so it feels like with the movement of feminism and sexuality and separation of masculine and feminine is like, man, you're too violent. Don't be safe in your body. Don't be safe in your expression of loud rah rah rah, beating your chest, because you're making us feel unsafe. Yes, there's a part of that men that are stepping into the shadow warrior and are causing harm to self and harm to other, and are either consciously, unconsciously, physically harming people, which has created unsafety for other men that embody the protector, the provider, that fights for love and fights for justice. And then on the other aspect is the feminist movement is also shutting down the natural essence of the masculine. So it's, for me, the foundation is relationship, and it's getting to know your inner warrior, is building that relationship, is creating the safety of yelling, screaming, creating the safety of beating your chest. What parts of your physical being make you feel powerful, whether that's in yoga, the horse stance, whether that's just and honoring that I'm a man, my legs, my chest, my beard, if men have beards, some men sometimes don't have beards. Yeah, and like approaching everything from full embodiment is the essence, from what I believe, of the warrior. And there was this beautiful saying that I heard someone say of like, the warrior, the full embodiment of the warrior is connected to his feminine, because the most powerful tool that a warrior has in battle is his intuition, which is our connection to receiving and listening. And so what I have learned and seen is a lot of men that identify as the warriors aren't connected to their feminine, to their intuition. And there's been studies made on men that are more intuitively aligned, that go into battle, have a higher survival rate. And so once again, the relationship is building a relationship with the warrior, which is embodiment, which is feeling safe in the physical male vessel, and connecting to the feminine, your intuition, your feeling body. And so everything on either playing comfortable, safe sports that allow you to tap into this physical expression of competition and challenge, plus doing all the things that allow you to soften into your feminine receiving, which is listening to the feminine, listening to your woman. If that woman is also in her light, in her integrated feminine and masculine. Yeah. How does that land? How does that feel? I went full in.
I think that, if I would have been able to kind of come at that question with like the warrior archetype from the beginning, I think that was what we were trying to get to. And that's why I love conversations, because sometimes you ask a question, you know what you're trying to get at, what you're trying to. And I think that, you just did a beautiful job of taking the question and going, I think the real question here is, why is the warrior archetype an important one? And I think that Western world has forgotten why it's important. I think that, and there's just also, there may not feel like there's a need, not only does it not feel, I think we need more conversations, kind of bringing it back into life, like you said, like bringing it back into the forefront and greeting these conversations of it being, a horrible expression of man, or, greeting these, negative conversations with like, no, let's explain to you why it's actually positive, There's a lot of us men, living in dormant. And you talked about, in your dancing career too, you kind of brought up the idea of your glory days. I think a lot of guys live in glory days, when they reflect back on when they actually felt like a man, and it might be when they were back playing sports, or when they were younger and they felt like they could just be more free. And then we've just been living a shell of ourselves ever since, and when the guys all get together, we just talk about the times where we were pounding our chests and having a great time. And then we go back into our dormant lives and just don't do anything about it, One tool I wanted to extrapolate out of you, because I know that you're a deep meditator. I know that meditation is a big part of your practice. And I think that, we've tried to shed light on meditation in this, on this platform many a times. And meditation to me comes in different forms for different people, so I think the more people you talk to about it, just like in life, you learn more about how you want to go about meditation. You're often closing your eyes and taking deep breaths between, certain sections. I saw you calmed yourself before you started the haka. I saw you calm yourself and ground yourself before you answer a question. I think that's a testament to your meditation practice, your ability to separate thoughts. In a real, very short form, what is your meditation practice? How do you kind of go about organizing that space when you enter that arena? Like, what are you thinking about? What are you taking away from it? And then hopefully that, can serve our audience as a new opportunity to see a different way about doing meditation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that. And yeah, I just want to highlight that, it's the warrior archetype doesn't mean you go to war. You can still fight for everything in your community. It's what are you fighting for? And how are you fighting? Because it's definitely relatable into the modern world, the Western world, to allow men to feel like men, but have that embodiment and safety of being a role model, of being a leader, of being a chief. So I just wanted to add that. I approach my meditation practice differently every time. But there are three main ways I approach it. The most important one for me is, firstly, as the witness and the observer, as for me, hands down, the fundamental of meditation, of not meditation, but inner work, of being able to observe and witness all that occurs in your universe, in your being, in your mind, without allowing any thought, emotion, past experience, future projection take you away from your present moment, and allowing to step into the witness and observer, which invites stillness in the space. Therefore, within meditation, allowing this type of meditation to flow through will allow more space and thoughts throughout the day. And then there's also, I also sit with, okay, what does my mind want to do? I'm going to give you full power and full freedom to do whatever you want. And also, I'm also in the witness and observer, but I also give opportunity to, if my thought wants to take me somewhere else, I'm like, okay. And so I consciously be with the thoughts and then consciously separate and witness the thoughts. Those are like my two main meditations, is just the simplicity of witnessing and observing and devoting to that practice and really instilling that and ingraining that in myself, so that when I'm in a space of trigger or a possible reactive state, I can still be like, okay, cool, let's take a deep breath. Let's witness everything that's happening. Okay, cool, this is how do I need to pause this, or can I fully respond with my heart and with center? And yeah, so the practice of the witness and the observer, and also giving free rein of like, actually, where do my thoughts want to go? And consciously doing it. And I have other practices of energetic meditations and other meditations, but those are my two main, of just sitting on my mat and just being with myself. Which, yeah, I dived into it more during my vision quest, because it was a four-day experience. And the first day, I let my mind run wild, and just like for a whole day and night. And I was kind of mentally fatigued after, just because of where it went. And then the next day, I focused on stillness, and just the contrast of mental exertion, energetic exertion was very different. And just how much breath I had for myself, just because I consciously was like, let's come back to present. Let's come back to presence. Yeah, so what I want to finish with is presence. The motivation is presence. The more I can observe my being, witness my being, the more I can invite stillness, the more invitation I have to be present in any given moment, in any interaction in all parts, internally, externally.
Beautiful. I was sitting there like, that's what I do, but I've never said it out loud before. Oh, that's so fascinating. Because I remember I used to do guided meditation, and I would have the voices in my head. And I only recently came to this thought through some other resource that, we're so busy listening to other people every day in our lives. And then we go to meditate, and then we just listen to somebody else anyway. It's like, we're never actually listening to ourselves. So I remember when I started to switch my meditation practice, and it was with some sort of ambiance music still, but I just did exactly that. It was just, okay, thoughts are here, and I'm just a witness and observer. And I think what I recognized is that it allowed me to sit deeper in the meditation and allow me to just be more, I guess, present would probably be the accurate word, is present. But even though I was thinking about the future sometimes, or the past, and I wasn't like thinking about the now, it was being present with the thoughts of the future, and being present with the thoughts of the past, and not letting them kind of be that overriding system. So I love that representation, and I appreciate you sharing that, because meditation is in the Western world, it's been taken a hold, and it has gone a million different directions. And sometimes people compare the same meditation to mindfulness, which are not the same things. And so it's like, what does that look like for you? And so we really appreciate you sharing that, and kind of giving us a deep dive into your own experience.
Yeah, it's motivated by relationship. How can you build relationship with all parts of the voices in your head, as opposed to just covering with another voice, like you said, with guided meditation? And it's okay if you go into the future. It's okay if you go into the past, but do you do it, or does it take you? And an example I have, right, is quite often in men's containers, we like to share share our story, and kind of share what's happened to us. And wrapping up the experience, we were doing like our last transparency circle, and it was just about being present without offering any type of advice, and just really listening and being. And one person went before me, and I quite often noticed that he went into the story. And so what happens of going into the story is, it's a mental journey, and which could create disconnection for people that are listening, also disconnection from the person sharing. And so I have a communication style that works to allow them to bring into the body, kind of like what I did at the start. I named sensations first. which invites me closer to myself, which also invites people closer to me, as opposed to I feel good, which is this word that's over here. And I gave him an opportunity, because it's for other people. I gave him an opportunity to go again. One of the words he said was, I don't feel my body. The connection with the warrior archetype is feel your body. Do you know your tool? And quite often his shares of the story took him away, which is like in the past. And as I facilitated this, the style of naming sensations and speaking from sensations first, I also said, you wanna speak about your story from your present moment experience, from who you are right now in this moment, not let the story speak itself. You wanna address the story, address your thoughts from who you are right now. Your thoughts from the past, I'm not with the past. I'm feeling into the thoughts from who I am in this moment. My projections into the future, I'm not in the future. I'm here right now, feeling into the future. And so it's that invitation of that building relationship with all parts of yourself that invites you to be right here present.
I mean, I think it's evident that we could speak to you for all day. But, I think that, your perspective and your insight, I think that, we often have a lot of, I don't know how to put it. I think that, sometimes we're scared of the spiritual journey a little bit. I think that we fall into like, the 10 steps to becoming this, or the 40 steps to becoming that. And, I often just find myself very connected with more spiritual literature, just because it's growing within, it's going inward to become better outward. It's the slowing down to speed up, where I think that, when you're just taking in all the books and you're learning at a rapid pace, it's like, those stories that you're learning are just here though, right? They're not here, and I think that, having that connection to what you're learning or what you're doing, from the body, from the mind, from the soul is important. And that is where the growth is. So I love this spiritual concept, but we want to leave you with this question here. It's a final question that we rephrase and repackage in a couple of different ways, but ultimately are trying to get the same thing out of it. It's this idea of, you being on your deathbed, and you being at your last couple of breaths with this world, and, reflecting, and maybe you're in that meditative state, and, you're quiet and you're thinking about your life and you're reflecting. And while you're reflecting, a young boy comes up to you, age 13, about to enter manhood, very nervous about, this next chapter of his life. And, he asks you, he says, hey, before you leave us, what are 3 pieces of advice that you could give me before taking on this journey of becoming a man? What do you know to be true from your experience? As you reflect and you looking back, what would you leave me with to continue your legacy of learning?
Mm-hmm. First one is always choose love. Always choose love. Second one is I want to express it in a couple of different ways, is have fun, or how much more fun can you have? A shaman recently said, if it's not happy, it's not ending. The story is not ending, and the story ends on a happy ending. But what is your happy ending? And so, yeah, that's, for me, it's, if you're not having fun, what's the point? Have fun. Choose love, have fun. And find out what you're fighting for. And discover how you're going to fight.
Beautiful. That was beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, and such incredible insight. I will take those as well. I'm that 13-year-old boy listening to you right now. I will take those as well.
Mhm.
So thank you for that. Thank you. And thank you for being with us today. Thank you for sharing your truth and your honest expression. Where can the people continue to find your truth and authentic expression out in the world? What are your social media handles? Is there another place that they can find you online? Where can the people find you?
Mhm. Instagram, the Panda Shaman, is exactly how it's spelled. My website, which has a lot of my men's work on there, www.tomatane.com. And I've also started TikTok, but I share a video each day on just little tips and hacks on whatever theme we're working through for the week. So yeah, go through there. It's another platform of integrating into sharing. So yeah, please message me, contact me. Love to hear and connect.
Excellent. Well, folks, thank you so much for joining us today on this powerful conversation. So many different concepts and ideas and areas of life that we covered in the men's space and around masculinity. And so we are so very grateful for you, my friend, for being here with us today. We appreciate you so much for sharing your time and sharing your story. There's so much power in just that itself. So thank you so much. And for everybody listening, you know where to find him. He shared his handles. We'll drop those in the links in the bio below. And thank you again for being here. Don't forget to subscribe, download, and we are on YouTube now. So be sure to check out our YouTube, Modern Maskulinity. The C is a K, to watch these episodes, not live, sorry, just recorded on here so you can see him possibly do the haka that he gave us the beautiful representation of. So thank you so much for being here, and we will see you in the next episode.